Hello there. Today we're going to be looking at crafting in Tirvale. It should be a shorter video than some of the long development sessions I've been posting. So if you just want to get in and take a look at some of the cool features we have upcoming, this is the kind of video for you. So for starters, we're here in the game with my usual user, and we're going to craft a short sword from scratch. And I'm going to start by actually taking a look at all of the recipes I know. And one thing you'll see here is there are station recipes and there are not station recipes. And this just means some things I can craft on the go, just standing around anywhere, maybe with a tool. And some things need to be crafted at a forge or a kitchen or something. So I'm going to look at everything for now, and we'll see if we have what I need. First of all, weapons. Short sword. I have short sword recipe. So you need to know a recipe to craft a specific item. And you can see that I know this recipe, but it needs to be crafted at any station. And this is really saying you need to be sitting down at like a table to craft this thing. So you can go anywhere, any forge, kitchen, woodworking station, it's fine, but not like out in the woods. Okay, what does it need? It needs a short sword blade, a short sword hilt, and some thread. So you're sort of wrapping the thread around to bind it together. The way crafting works in Tirvale is recipes require either specific items or categories of items. So in this case, it's requiring 3 specific items. So a short sword blade, a sword hilt, which actually can be used for multiple swords, and thread. But if I go to look at a short sword blade, for instance, and I think that's under weapon parts, you would think. Weapon parts. This is not alphabetized. Maybe it should be. Short sword blade. This requires a forge. So this is not anywhere. You need to actually forge it. It requires a smithing hammer, which we don't have right now. And it requires 2 ingots and fuel. And here's, I think, where the Tirvale crafting system gets really interesting. We can use any 2 ingots to craft my short sword blade, and the metadata that's in those ingots, which we'll get to, tells us what becomes of the short sword blade. So if I use 2 iron ingots, I'm going to probably have a heavier and maybe slightly more damaging short sword short sword blade than if I use 2 copper ingots, which would have other properties. There aren't that many materials, but the combination of materials is very high. There's very, 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 very many versions of a short sword you can make, because you have to make a short sword blade with any 2 ingots. So choose 2 problem from like 8 options for now. It can be of different qualities, so it adds another dimension to it. And there's fuel. You can use different fuels, which also have an effect on it. And then you combine it with the hilt, which also goes through the same process where you're picking from wood, and it can be any wood of the like 10 wood varieties you have. And this is all only using alpha released materials. I think in the end game, you're looking more like at 15 different potential ores you can craft from. So it's a pretty wide range of outcomes for short swords, and you get to things like long swords. So let's go back up actually here, long sword blade. Long sword blades actually have 3 ingots. So now you have even more options for how to customize your weapons based on different materials. Maybe, a certain region that you can find a certain ore in will be more likely to have weapons made of that ore because it's cheaper, because they're found there. But, you get to higher tier crafting, you are going to want to seek out the exact set of materials to build your dagger that can house a lot of poison that has a high accuracy. Like doing that requires a certain set of materials, even though you're still using the normal dagger recipe. And I think that's really elegant and scalable. It's not like, okay, well, I've unlocked a sword, so here's a sword, and here's like a level 2 sword. Like, no, it's a sword. What you turn it into is based on what you put into it. And so you get this really nice horizontal progression and optionality in crafting that applies to every single crafting discipline. So cooking, forging, making things out of wood, building ships, building houses. Each material-based property gets inherited into the resulting item and affects it in some way. Even, you hunt down a wolf, you're going to get some mixture of like pelts and fur and bones and meat, and those are going to inherit the base properties of the wolf. So like a small bone is different if it comes from a wolf versus if it comes from like a sheep, and they're going to have different properties and have different uses, but they're both still small bones. It's just their metadata underneath is different. So that was a lot of talking. Let's actually try to go craft something. So I'm gonna go to the station. So I'm here in Cafe. I'm gonna go to this blacksmith's guild, which has a forge. What is happening here? Interesting. I was recently working on some updates to how you edit features. I'll get a little preview. I've made it so that it's a little easier to edit what's available in a feature. So we'll go to the Blacksmith's Guild, which is somewhere down here. And this is the admin view for those of you who haven't seen it. This is for me to use on the back end. And you can see it's a guild and there's a forge and it costs 1. That is something I added like yesterday to make it easier to populate all the many towns and things with the right features, but I think maybe there was an issue. So hold tight real quick. I might actually pop out and fix that and come right back. All right, and we're back. I just hopped out and fixed that small issue. So now we go into the Blacksmith's Guild and we can indeed craft, and that's what we're going to do. So I have quite a few recipes here. Let's just look at that short sword blade again. Okay, so smithing hammer, ingot, fuel. We're gonna go ahead and actually do this from the ground up. So we want to do, let's do an iron and copper sword. So iron ore, fuel, and copper ore. I'm gonna go over to the admin tool and I'm gonna go give myself some iron ore. Iron ore, let's go to this. Let's should be quality 0. Quality goes from 0 to, technically it's uncapped, but in practice 0 to 5. I'm gonna give myself 10 of this, and it should have default metadata. We'll see. And copper ore, similarly, let's do this. 10 is fine. And finally, coal. We'll need a bunch of coal because we're going to do this. Let's give myself 20 coal. Then we're going to need some wood because let's do an ash block. We're going to end up making a sword hilt. We're going to need some thread, which I could craft the thread from scratch, but it's a lot of steps. Well, it's not that many steps, but we don't need to do that today. And we need a smithing hammer. Great. And we're gonna need a wood carving knife for the wood. And I think that's good. We'll come back to it if we need to. Okay, so let's get our crafting started. So we're gonna start by crafting some ingots. Let's start by crafting 1 ingot. Okay, and before I get into this, just take a look. Both the iron ore and the coal have their own sort of stats, their own metadata. They have, and interestingly, I don't think it should have thermal insulation. I'll take a look at that. But they have, some 0 things, but hardness is a main one. Malleability is a main one, robustness is a main one, and luster, which is sort of like how attractive is this ore. Coal has luster 0. And when I craft, actually the fuel doesn't have its metadata applied, it's just going to use its quality. So you need, quality fuel if you want to make quality ingots, but otherwise the fuel's metadata is not used. Coal has its metadata used in a few places, but mostly it's just used as fuel. Okay, I'm gonna craft an ingot. I'm too hungry to craft this. Okay, I am going to cheat a smidge and just update my hunger. But yes, you cannot craft if you are too hungry, which makes sense. Okay, so I just cheated in the server and I updated my hunger. Here, let's let you see this on the right. I'll leave myself on the left. So I have now full hunger and thirst. My fatigue is not full, but that's okay. We will not use 20 fatigue, I think. Excuse me. Let's do an iron ingot. Okay, so smithing hammer, iron ore, coal. Okay, and we're gonna craft it. Great, I'm gonna craft maybe another 2 just to have it. Okay, I crafted a few. Let's take a look at what they have. So we said iron had 7 hardness, 5 robustness. Let's just focus on that for now. We'll go and take a look at iron ingot, Q1 probably, and it does indeed still have 7 hardness and 5 robustness, and let's keep that in mind. Let's craft now a copper ingot, and so copper and iron ingots both require specific materials, specific items, so it requires copper ore, not ore, but copper ore, and that's because, well, mostly it's because we want the item image to look like an iron ingot versus a copper ingot. So this one, copper, has 5 hardness, 7 robustness, as opposed to 7 hardness and 5 robustness. Yeah, so they're flipped. They do different things. Copper also has this absorbing property, which actually allows you to add more coatings to your weapon, which is interesting. And copper also has higher luster. So copper looks good. Basically, you're gonna impress people more wearing copper armor than wearing iron armor. So let's craft a couple copper ingots. Okay, very good. Let's do like 3. Okay, so that's some copper ingots. And like our iron ingots, we should be able to find them and see that, yes, indeed, they're still the same 5 and 7. So that was easy. That was just, 1 in, 1 out. Let's take a look at a short sword blade. Iron ingot, copper ingot, coal. I'm too tired to craft this. I'm gonna cheat a little bit and update my fatigue. Update player. All right, and let's do this again. Okay, what did we get here? We have this short sword blade, and I was crafting some more earlier, so that's why I have 3. But look, okay, so we have some interesting values here. We have the weight is 9, which is should be the sum of the weight of these ingredients, weighted by some loss value. So 5 plus 4 is 9. We don't include the weight of the fuel, and then there's some like slight loss value because it's not a perfect crafting recipe. Like you're losing some metal in the furnace. The values here, so like hardness is the average of 7 and 5 and 7, so 6. Similarly, robustness, 5 and 7, 6. We see like absorbing. Copper is very absorbing, but we're losing some of that by mixing it, so we're getting down to 3.5. And in general, we're seeing that this is now the average value. So this is like my unique copper iron sword, and that's like the main feature of Tirvale crafting is you fuse the metadata of your input items. This extends to anything you craft basically that has multiple possible inputs. I'm going to go ahead and craft a short sword handle, which I think is in here. Carpentry Guild. I don't have access right now. I might not. We've already spent a while here. I'm going to go ahead and just short sword hilt. This is a basic hilt. What's it called? Hilt. Basic sword hilt. I'm just going to give myself a basic sword hilt for now. So I could craft this and it would have, some metadata, but for now I'm just going to not do that. You see this has no metadata. That wouldn't happen in game, but if it did, it doesn't contribute to the final output. And then now, if I want to go ahead and craft my final sword, I need to do it at any station, like I said before. So forge is fine. Short sword. Here we go. And I'm going to take my blade, and I'm going to take the hilt. I do need thread, which does have some metadata, so I should be getting some fusion of, thread stats and short sword blade stats, knowing that thread's not going to affect it as much. And some of these, the game doesn't tell you. It doesn't tell you there's a 33% effect of the blade and a 20% effect of the thread. It's under the hood, and some players might experiment enough to figure out exactly what the split is, but part of this is supposed to be by feel, right? You're a crafter, you spend a lot of time with a certain handful of recipes, you should get a feel for what impacts the metadata the most from your different ingredients for those recipes. But here's my sword. Let's go ahead and craft it. This will land in equipment. So short sword, I've already had a couple, so let's see which one it was. Probably going to be something like, I don't know about that one. Maybe this one. Not that one. Not that one, because we know we had 6 and 6 before. So it probably was the first one. Okay. So we had, okay, so a couple of things here. This is, my numbers changed wildly. Damage is now 0.18. Where did damage come from? Why do I have damage and not hardness? When you craft a final item, oftentimes it'll transform certain values into other values. So in our case, hardness is not useful for equipment. Damage multipliers are useful for equipment, for weapons specifically. So hardness is translated into damage, and then I can tell you what the math is there. Basically, a hardness value of 4 is neutral, meaning no effect, so it's going to be damage of 0, so no multiplier. A hardness effect of like 6 will be 6 minus 2, net 2, positive, times some multiplier. So we had something like 6-ish, so I think the multiplier is like 0.2, or 0.2, so if it's 2 off, maybe 0.1. So right now I'm multiplying my damage by 1.18, so it's 18% more damage for my sword because of the materials I crafted it in. Similarly, accuracy, I probably had its malleability translates to accuracy. This is probably 0 or 4, so again, 4 is the neutral point, so it's 0. We talked about absorbing. Robustness by itself doesn't actually affect anything in a final stat. What it does is your durability is set by your robustness. So depending on what you built your item out of, it will have higher or lower durability. And as I've said in other videos, there is no repairing in Tirvale. So creating items that are durable is very important because it's going to lose a pip of durability with each action, sometimes even more. So durability on an item is a feature of the item rather than just like a thing that everything has. And you craft like a god tier sword once and you're done and you never have to craft a thing again and never get a new weapon. Like, no, you're gonna maybe go on a big quest or go buy some like really fancy weapon that some players crafted that's really unique, that they've named, and you'll enjoy that weapon for some period of time, a month or two, and then eventually it will break and you're going to need to do that again. And I think that's interesting and creates consistent demand, and it's part of the game. So this is really the outcome that I wanted to show and talk about. You can look at this in context of your equipment. So, and you'll see a little, it's not a bug, it's just an artifact of me cheating. My clothes, my armor change colors every time I load because I spawned them without specifying the color. So it randomly picks a color every screen. Real recipes, if I crafted it or bought it in the store at the market, would have a color value set and it would be always the same color. But let's look at my sword. So I have the new one I crafted. No, that's not it. It's this one maybe? Yeah. So here's my data. I'm gonna wield that one. They don't have names, so I'm not sure which one's which. But 40. So it's likely that, so this one's damage 0.18. Let's look at what they all are. One has no damage buff. Oh, sorry. This one has a negative damage buff, so it's probably the 20 damage one. This one has no damage buff, so this is probably the base 30 plus my skills. I actually have some sword skills, which also provide damage buffs. And then there's the one, that's the plate mail. So that's a no damage buff, negative 40%, and then the one be crafted, which has 18%. So this one is probably the no damage buff because my base damage is 30 on a short sword. I'm getting 34 because I have sword skills, and those buff my damage when wielding a sword. This one is probably the minus 40%, I would think. And so this one is the one we crafted. Probably need to do a display issue here where I round my class. But yeah, this is the one I crafted. And it does increase my attack by quite a lot. Overall by 18%, and then by another some amount of percent based on my skills. So that's a pretty successful sword. Reasonable durability. Doesn't have an accuracy buff. The class is not great. So I guess using iron in my weapons is a negative effect on how I'm perceived in high society. And that affects things like what taverns you can enter and whatnot. Might also affect things like what NPCs are willing to give you different things. Yeah, and so that's kind of the main gist of crafting here. We have this metadata combination, which then lets you equip things, and they get different buffs and values based on what they've equipped, based on what you've equipped and what their metadata is. I guess the last thing I'll show, just because I mentioned it, is skills. And I've probably shown this in other videos, but you do have overall accuracy buff and damage buff from your sword skill. And these are very much subject to change, what the values are, but the point is, regardless, having different levels and different combat skills is going to affect your damage and accuracy and various things if you're wielding the relevant weapon or relevant shield in this case. So that is crafting in Tirvale. Lots of different stations, lots of different guilds. There's I think in the alpha release, the closed alpha, we're going to have Mason's Guild, which has sort of masonry crafting, cutting stones, using stones for buildings, and bonesmithing, which is cool and kind of what it sounds like, using bones to make things, typically weapons and armor. Blacksmith's Guild, you just saw, metals. Tailoring Guild, which is sort of leather armors, so armors made from animal hides, sort of finery, nice clothes used for increasing your character's class to maybe go into specific institutions, and also like survival clothes, so things like fur coats to go into the north. Culinary Guild will be in the release. That's making food. There's a lot of rich mechanics for food. Just to preview it a little bit, food has quite a few metadata entries, including ones for both nutrition. There's like about 5 of those, and then flavor, also about 5. And both affect how much sort of hunger and thirst yield you get when consuming the food. There's sort of 3 mechanics here. One is variety. If you don't eat a variety of different meals, you get sick of them, and then the amount you gain from eating or drinking goes down. There's preference. Each character is created with a random taste preference set, so it's between like umami and sweet and spicy and stuff. And if you eat something that's very far from your taste preferences, you're going to not like it, and then it won't be very effective. Whereas if you eat something that's very aligned with your taste preferences, you're going to really like it. And lastly, nutritional balance. I think over a rolling 10 to 30 last meals, if you balance the different nutritional values you're eating, your character again gains a lot more hunger and thirst from eating things. So bit of a mini game. You could certainly just like eat bread and cheese and milk and sort of rotate them, and it wouldn't be all that effective comparatively, but like you can get by probably. But you can also, if you're trying to go on like a really difficult trip, you probably want to pay attention to what exactly you're eating, how it matches up to your character. And all those things come from the ingredients. So, crafting flour from different grains, which is of the category grain, gives you different macronutrients and flavor profiles without having to have 7 different flour recipes. There's one flour recipe, and the ingredients determine, or the mix of ingredients determine what the output metadata profile is. So hope you enjoyed a look at crafting. Definitely Subscribe, check out our website, sign up for our emailing list, join our Discord if you're interested in participating in our closed alpha, which I think might release next week. We are pretty close. I need to do another round of just like bug cleanup and one more networking thing, but basically ready. I mean, we're not going to have hundreds of players in for closed alpha, maybe be up to 100. Just want to start to get a sense for, is it fun? What can we tweak to make the balance better? How are the different like constants and timing values? So love to see you there. Definitely reach out, and see you all next time.